So I was asked to talk about online fundraising during a pandemic. Um, and I will preface this with saying that I could have put together a slideshow that contains, a whole bunch of bar graphs and statistics and all of that. But the way that I view fundraising, while those things are important, I care more about facts. I care more about people. I care more about meeting people where they're at when it comes to fundraising, um, and knowing your audience and knowing what works. So what works for me and the zoo is not necessarily what's going to work for everybody from a statistical point of view. So this is really just me kind of stating what we've done, what works for us, and then just some general do's and don'ts about online fundraising in general. I will also say that, so we shut our doors on March 17th, right at noon or 12:30 or whatever time that was, Rachel. We had about an hour's notice to do so. But the second that happened, we really kind of went into fight mode. There was no flight option. It was fight mode, and it was, what are we going to do to get through this? So some general do's and don'ts for online fundraising, especially now, is obviously making sure that your website is up to date. And that's true in general, but even more so now. From day one, when things started to really look bad, and when we had to shut our doors, we knew that it was a very fluid situation. Things were going to change. And when you have a captive audience, or you have members who rely on you, or you have clients who rely on you, people who look to you for help, or they look to you for their, favorite place to go, their favorite thing to do, they need you to be informative. They need you to remain consistent in keeping that website up to date so that they have a home base to go to. And then figuring out what your donors, your audience, what their preferred platforms are. And for us, it's a mix of really everything. With the zoo being an organization that is for all ages, we really need to cover all of our bases, all of the platforms. So that is website updates, it's email, it's snail mail, it's social media. You need to be able to meet your audience where they are most comfortable, because that's also going to be where they're most generous. So you need to make it easy for them. We knew right away that we had to be creative. We needed to be unique. And so looking at the different platforms, taking advantage of the strengths there. So obviously for Instagram, that's pictures, it's TikToks. For Facebook, we really looked at videos and, creative and funny memes, and then just a lot more content. When it comes to online giving, and I'll get into this more, you need to give your audience options. There's no, you can't just put something out there through an email or online, your website, through social media. You can't just say, go to our website, click on the donate button. You have to be able to give them more options than that. We knew throughout this whole time that over communication was going to be key. And that isn't just with your audience. We really looked at that just as a whole, over communicating with our staff, over communicating with our donors, with our members. It was very, very important to do that in real time. And then, yes, don't assume they know where to go. You need to be very specific. If they have to go somewhere specific to donate, if they're not able to just click on a button right there, make sure that you are very, very clear. If you make it difficult, you make it too hard for them to donate, they won't. Don't underestimate the power of social media. I swear that's probably one of the underlying themes of the past 4 months for us. that is where we are able to go and express our mission, express the urgency of our needs, express the amazing things that are happening here, the births, all of that. So don't underestimate the power of social media. If you don't have anyone on staff that is familiar with at least two major social media platforms, that's certainly worth investing in when when we're able to invest in things again. um, and then, yeah, don't sit back and wait for that money to roll in, because it won't, unless you are consistent and you are out there and you are letting people know in a very honest manner that you need their help, then it won't come. And that's been a big topic for a lot of different webinars and different Zoom calls and things like that. I don't know if many of you hop onto whether it's the partnership or any of the other local webinars that take place on a consistent basis. There's always that question of, well, you know, we don't know whether we should ask or not. We don't know, it's a hard time for everybody. It's a hard time for families. People are losing their jobs. And all of that is true. And it is, obviously, as you guys know, it is also very, very hard for nonprofits. There are people out there that are able to give. So do not be afraid to ask. When we closed our doors on the 17th of March, by the end of that week, we had our appeal written. It was written and it went out the following week. So we really didn't waste any time when it came to fundraising, both. And when I say appeal, that was postal, it was email, and it was social media. So that happened right away. So what have we done? First and foremost, like I mentioned, getting creative. We knew we had to be innovative. We had to be unique. We had to stand out. So we got right to work in terms of what content can we put out there? And it's not just about online fundraising. One thing that a colleague of mine said very early in my career, and I've used it as my mantra ever since, is if you lead with the mission, the money will follow. So we were putting as much out there as we possibly could, from Zoo Creates, which was a daily at the same time, education. I don't know if you want to call it a class, but it was a craft that our education team did on social media every single day at the same time, keeping that consistency, doing some sort of fun craft with things that a lot of people have at home. So not something that they were going to have to go out and purchase, but that they have at home. We were putting keeper chats on our social media. We were out there on the grounds filming videos of different things that were taking place, and splicing together, fun and funny videos. As you can see on your screen here, just taking lots of pictures. On May the 4th, we always take advantage of the Star Wars theme on that day, and we take some interesting pictures and put some cute wording with it, just anything that's going to grab attention. One thing that was really successful for us and continues to be, it always has been, but we just did more of it, was live streams. Whether that was our aquarium or it was our lions, or, we moved it around throughout the entire zoo. But doing live streams of our animals, the feedback that we got on every single one of those, and we continue to, is, thank you so much. We miss seeing those animals so much. We miss them. We know they miss people. Putting different questions out there. Did you know this about this certain animal? Just to get people thinking. Every week, and this is always the case, we do a Wednesday e-blast, but those became more important when people weren't able to be here at the zoo. So that was, yes, sharing some of the things that I've just mentioned, but then consistently every week talking about our urgent appeal, our urgent need. Zoom calls, like you mentioned, we are doing a lot of Zoom calls now, right? countless Zoom calls now that everything is pretty virtual. And I think that they will continue to be. But what we did was we started promoting having one of our animals come and visit every people's Zoom calls. So not only was that something fun, meeting people where they're at, everybody's on Zoom, but then also opening up a small revenue stream for us while we were closed, and we continue to do those. We've done about 28 animal Zoom calls so far. So it's something just to kind of change up the monotonous, weekly team calls that everybody is having now. And then we also partnered with a local small business, and all of these things, everything that I'm mentioning, was pumped out onto our social media day in and day out. There was always something new going up throughout every single day. So the local small business that we partnered with, they're a sign company, and I'm friends with the owners, but they reached out and they're hurting too. They were a small business. They have, I want to say, less than 20 employees. And so they were hurting badly. And so he approached me and said, hey, what if we partner and we do a fundraiser for the zoo, and we'll split the proceeds 50-50, but we will do some merchandise. We'll do shirts, we'll do bags, we'll do yard signs, we'll do face masks. They did all of those things, and we promoted the heck out of it, and so did they. And it wasn't a huge revenue stream, but it was something. And it was also the zoo kind of showing everybody that yes, we need help, but we want to help as well. And partnering with a local small business was a way to do that. I talk about the urgent appeal, and in that urgent appeal, both the social media version, which was taken from the actual letter that we sent out through postal mail, it was very honest. One thing that I think is a mistake that a lot of nonprofits do is when they're putting out a solicitation, regardless of what form, is they spend a lot of time in that letter talking about the amazing things that they've accomplished, which is great. But I really look at that as a post solicitation or a post campaign letter. If you're going to ask for money, people need to know why. What is it going to go to? If you're doing all these great things, why do you need my money? So I think that is key. How you message things out is extremely important. If it's just praising the accomplishments of what you've done, you will raise less money because people don't think you need it as much. So our urgent appeal was honest. It talked about, the fact that it costs $19,000 a day to operate our zoo. So that is while we're open or while we're closed. Our expenses, while we cut tremendously, our expenses, we have some that they just have to be there. They can't be cut. And so $19,000 a day is what it costs to operate your zoo. And that's what we put out there. And when we have no operations dollars coming in, that's catastrophic. And if people want the zoo to look like the zoo that they know and love this time next year, we need their help. So that's what we shared. So why did we do this? And so that's a picture. That's a picture of my family and I, because some of you guys know that while we were closed, we did a zoo lights in our parking lot where people could come in. They were not able to get out of their cars. They were not supposed to even open their windows, although some did and just kind of yelled at us. Thank you. But we had people come through our parking lot. We set up a lot of our night eyes lights, had a ton of signage around the parking lot, both cute, Barnaby the tortoise misses you, or Meatball, our new sea lion, can't wait to meet you, to it costs $19,000 a day to operate your zoo. Another sign, our keepers are here working every single day throughout the pandemic. Other signs, Facebook donation page, website donation page, encouraging people to donate. So we did that for multiple reasons. We did that, and we put all of that time and effort and camera footage and live footage into our online platforms. Yes, because we love our members and we love our visitors. We missed them tremendously. It was also to continue to spread our mission. That's obviously key. Again, if you lead with a mission, the money will come. We wanted to be viewed as being innovative and out in front of some of this, and be a light for people while things are so dark and dim. And then selfishly, from the development standpoint, to keep the zoo in the forefront of people's minds while they're at home and not able to come here. By doing that, when people were thinking about their charitable dollars, the goal was, by doing all of this, we were going to be near the front of people's minds when it came to that. So I would love to say that we're just really awesome people and our mission is so amazing that we just did all of this just to keep people smiling. And while that is true, we did it to stay relevant. When you can't open your doors to people, you have to stay relevant. So it's putting as much out there so that A, yes, you can raise money. B, yes, you're one of the first places that people want to go because you have created that desire to attend. So by doing all of this, our goal was that we would maybe shorten the length of time between then and when people were ready to come visit once we were able to open, and be right there at the front when they wanted to be charitable again. So yeah, the Let's Start Raising Money mantra started right away. There was really, again, with the costs that we incur on a daily basis, there was no time to waste. So we started with a postal appeal simultaneously that went out in our e-blasts. We did do a general urgent appeal fundraiser on Facebook. But back to what I said about giving people options, we weren't just going to repost that urgent appeal on Facebook over and over and over again. Instead, on all of those cool things that I talked about that we were doing, whether it was the memes or videos, we tried not to do this with the education stuff because that really was just to give kids at home something fun to do. But on a lot of the others, those all had donate buttons. So those were all technically a part of our online appeal, but it was giving people a variety of ways to do it and a variety of reasons. You know, some people may have given just because we put a really cool meme up about our flamingos, and they were like, I love the flamingos at the zoo, so I'm going to donate to this one. And then collectively, that just adds up. We did take part in Giving Tuesday Now. So that was something we're all familiar with, Giving Tuesday, that takes place in the fall. But Giving Tuesday Now obviously was something that was, I think, worldwide, and just yet another option to give people to donate. You really just have to give people a variety of choices. And so then, yeah, Facebook, basically what I just said was we did do a fundraiser, but then we had quite a few, and continue to have quite a few Facebook posts that also have a donate button, because people love the zoo for different reasons. And so different posts are going to strike a chord in them. Probably much like many of your organizations, people take part in certain aspects of it, and that's where their heart is. That's where you kind of have some leverage with them, because they care very, very much about this program. This is the one that their family member participates in. So if you're sharing about different pieces of your mission and different pieces of what you do every day, you will strike chords with different people. Events, yes. When our doors are closed, we can't have events, right? Very wrong. You need to have events if at all possible. That was something you hear all the time about pivoting. You know, as things change, we pivot and we do this. As things change, we pivot. We purchased a package with One Cause, which is an online events platform, whether it's online bidding, they're very heavy into online bidding, but they also are the kind of online giving portion side of things for different events like walks and runs and all of that. We purchased that before this ever happened because we are adding a walk to save animals in September, and we wanted an online platform that could be just for that event, that could be the home base for that event. So, but in doing so, it's a year-long kind of package, and you can use it as many times as you want. So during the pandemic, we knew that we needed to create revenue streams. So we did an online art auction. Believe it or not, most of our animals know how to paint. So whether it's the rhino or it's the red panda, even I chuckle. Rachel's probably chuckling too. Even our catfish paint. Believe that or not. But as you can see on here, our snakes paint, all of our reptiles paint. So we did a whole bunch of those, and we put them on an online auction, and that one event raised just shy of like $9,000. So who knew? But when people are kind of stuck at home, they're looking for things to entertain themselves, and so that was a huge hit. And that's actually something that we're going to bring back a couple times a year moving forward, probably. And then not only just utilize animal art, but hopefully in the future utilize actual local artists also. During the pandemic, that was a bit harder. We took to One Cause to sell merchandise. Having online stores, if you will, was not something that we've done a whole lot of, but we created these shirts for Zubru, before the pandemic. And so we went ahead and we made that expense, and we purchased them, and we started selling them online. And that increased tremendously as our first Zubru approached. We expanded a little bit, taking a note of all the restaurants that were doing curbside pickup, and also expanded that into curbside drinks. Who knew that you could go to curbside and pick up a margarita and drive home with it? But we can. So we did beer leading up to our first Zubru, which is the virtual Zubru. We sold our merchandise and we sold beer online, and then we set up days for people to come do curbside pickup. And it went really, really well. People thought that it was smooth. And with One Cause, it was. Had we tried to use kind of our own technical abilities internally, it probably would not have gone as smoothly at all. And then you'll see that picture down in the right. We did do our first Zubru, and we did it virtually. We partnered, we did pay them, but we partnered with DSM TV, who, for those of you that don't know, the two men that are Pianopalooza, they started this business it started for artists during the pandemic, for musicians to be able to share their music and also try to raise money, because obviously they weren't able to perform anywhere. They expanded that into being able to do live events, live virtual events. And so they are the ones that do the downtown farmers market. So we knew that they did it. They were successful at it. We had seen their work and knew that they put together a quality event. So we went that route. And as I mentioned before this actually started, we were able to put so much more of our mission in front of those people that usually come here, walk around, see our animals, listen to our keepers. So they do get some mission, and then they get to hear music here as well. But since we weren't able to have live music, and we were inching our way into bringing people back to the zoo, and we knew that virtual was the way to go, and we shot so much footage. We had keeper chats. We were able to promote our adopt program, where you can adopt an animal and put your name on a sign out in front of that exhibit for a year. That's not something that is usually promoted during Zubrus. We promoted our behind the scenes tours, which are another revenue stream for us. We put out multiple calls for support throughout the event. And really with our Zubru, loyals, that foundation, we were just kind of keeping that fire burning. They were ready. They want Zubru back. And this was a way for us to keep them engaged. Keeping people engaged is very, very key. So in hindsight, we got creative. We got very, very, very creative. That's from the event side of things, education, as well as animal care, and just in our marketing. And it was literally an all hands on deck. No idea was a bad idea. We were asking everyone here at the zoo for their ideas. It wasn't the sole responsibility of myself or my team or the education team or, you know, the person who oversees our marketing. We were all in there, from our keepers to our CEO to, I mean, everyone. And no idea was a bad idea. It was just a matter of, can we make it work? How quickly? And will it be quality? Because we want to make sure that whatever we put out there is quality. Allow for innovation. You know, what we have always done is one of the worst phrases in mankind. We do it because this is what we've always done. This is how we've always done it. No, that's gone. Like that is no longer something that can come out of your mouth. You have to allow for that creativity, allow for again, meeting people where they're at. Appropriate IT infrastructure. Rachel, I hope you're on mute because you're probably laughing really hard at that. I will say that the time ticketing system has been a struggle, but for online fundraising, making sure that all your buttons work on your website, making sure that if you are using Facebook, that link actually does take you to where it needs to go. Making sure that if you're going to put a lot of content out there, that it's quality. I've already talked about the next one. And plan A, B, and C. That's kind of the whole, as far as events go and online fundraising, we literally, for every single event that we have and that we had beginning at the start of the pandemic to even now, we have plan A, B, and C. We have plan A, people can be here. We have plan B, people can't be here and it's completely virtual. And then we have plan C, where it's a hybrid of both. And I think that that's important, especially now. Certainly don't be of the frame of mind that now that we're starting to be able to open things up, that, you know, the virtual events or virtual Zooms or anything like that need to go away. We have to be able to meet people where they're most comfortable. And by giving them those options, having events, but also having the virtual possibility, you're going to see more fundraising. You're going to see more money because people appreciate the fact that you're trying to meet them where they're at. And then, yeah, have some fun with it. I almost didn't put that on there because nothing about COVID-19 is fun. Nothing about what we've all experienced is fun. Nothing about the fact that we were losing $19,000 a day was fun. But we had to put a good face out there. We had to be creative. We had to try to give people some joy and some laughter. Finding the positives each day got more and more difficult, but at the same time, it became more and more important. So that's certainly something that we really tried to do and put at the forefront of our efforts. And then, yeah, thank you guys. Like I said, this presentation was not going to be about statistics or percentages or anything like that. It really is just about, if you are trying to raise money online, this is what works for us. These are our best practices. We missed people so very much, and we are doing everything in our power now to make modifications to allow for responsible safety, hoping that people also take some responsibility as they begin to come out as well. But in a lot of the messages that have come in, we get a lot of great messages. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for allowing me to feel safe. Thank you for having this protection there, and, you know, promoting social distancing and talking about what you've done. But then we get the negatives too. We get those. And in my responses to them, I try to be as transparent as possible. And that's online, because obviously there's feedback online, a lot of it as well. But we try to be honest and just say, you know what, we're doing the best we can, and we are doing what we can do to try to make it through this also. Like I mentioned at the beginning, if people want their zoo that they love to look the same, to be the same, to feel the same a year from now, we're doing everything that we can to make sure that that happens. So, do you guys have any questions about online fundraising or just what we've done to encourage online fundraising? But like I said, online fundraising is one segment of your donors. So while it's extremely important and you can't underestimate the power of social media, you definitely have to make sure you're covering all your bases.
You know, one thing that I will say, Amanda, to your point of talking about social media, I completely agree. And making sure that you are out there, because that's one thing the chamber pivoted to. We were very, very heavy in this past year, especially in rolling out events, because this chamber traditionally didn't have many besides our larger ones, which of course went away. So we were very much in the same position. I mean, not only are we a membership organization, and we're certainly not going to harass our members for their dues, but we were most importantly taste of something spectacular. That went away. That was supposed to occur in May, and that was our chamber's largest fundraiser in which we funded scholarships. So we had to pivot. It was a little bit differently because we couldn't just pivot to the events, but we had to pivot in being that resource for our members, because everybody was in that chaos as well. I remember the day of walking in and all of a sudden our building was closed down. We office share, so we are not back in our building, but we've never closed down. So going back to social media, that's what we did, is we made sure that we had all the information that we could. And then of course our chamber, we hire out our social media. So kudos to Annie Judicessi with Hey Jude. But we were actually recognized nationally along with the Greater Des Moines Partnership because of how much we've been out there. Chambers, it wasn't just ours; it's many of them that they have these financial struggles, and so we weren't eligible for a lot of this funding, so we had to just make sure that we were proving our value there. For our members, which we did. So again, poor Annie, she's probably just coming out of the fog now. It was constant. And we were just getting everything out there that we could. And the biggest need at the time, of course, was the funding, or making sure that our members were aware, especially for our restaurants and retail and things, that they were still open and doing what they could. But I just can't stress that enough. A lot of chambers went dark, whereas we went the opposite and just went out there and really made sure that we flooded them on social media.
Yep, absolutely. And we definitely did that as well. And the only reason why we were able to do that is I think that when all of this really hit, we took our time to try to figure out what were the best decisions. It was mentioned earlier that decisions were made because people wanted to keep their staff. And I will say that nonprofits in general approached this very, very differently in different ways. And it was important for us to keep our staff as well. Obviously, our animal care has to be here. But we did everything that we could to keep our staff also, and we would not have been able to be as present and have as much content out there had we taken a different direction. So I definitely hear you on that. And
one of the things, go ahead.
I was just going to add, from Orchard Place's side, Amanda, obviously we were raised in the same fundraising background of lead with the mission and the money will follow. Yep. And we followed the same mantra, and we did the same of that. This was our time to show people, like, who we are, what we do for the most part, but here's our time to really show you and highlight what would change if we weren't here, and why, and being very transparent. We are in the same boat. We are making a transition. We had to pivot technology. We transitioned hundreds of therapists to telehealth. We didn't have the infrastructure to do that. And so we're right there too. It was April 1st, we launched a giving campaign of $100,000. We didn't think we had a shot in hell of getting that, and we hit it by the end of the month. And our donors raised to the challenge because they knew this. We're not asking them for something like this all the time, but we were also showing them, we're saying exactly, this is where we need help. And you can't really argue with what we're asking for help with right now. And so people really came to the top, but it was that combination of social media, the hard copy letters, but just letting people know, you know, who we are, why we're here, why you've supported us for so long. But then also, so many of us have rode out the last recession in the nonprofit sector. And so it's like you took those trips and those old like battle wounds that you had from that one, and how do we put that to practice into this one? And what did we learn that didn't work and what might work this time? So I think it's just been a lot of, we're Zoom members, and so it was fun getting your emails and seeing the updates, but also seeing what all these other nonprofits were trying, what was working, what might not have worked is great. And then, you know, where's the innovation coming from? And then like you guys too, what can we keep doing in the years ahead that we did this year that ended up being really beneficial? So I think it's just, it was all great points of just, it's different. It doesn't mean it's bad. It's not fun necessarily, but it's different. It challenged us all to think differently.
Absolutely. I think we learned tons of lessons during all of this, and in being so innovative and getting as creative as we tried to do and were able to do, you're absolutely right. There are things that we will take from this that we will keep doing, because we're like, what? Why weren't we doing this the whole time? This was great. But yeah, I mean, it really kind of, it lit a different sort of fire in us, and really kind of expanded our way of looking at things. And but yes, being as transparent as possible, and especially with a place like the zoo, a lot of people don't know that we're a 501c3 nonprofit. B, because we do really try to just put quality out there. People think that we have all the money in the world to do so. It's absolutely not the case. So yeah, I mean, and we don't have the infrastructure either. We applied for the community foundation. Now I'm blanking on the name of the nonprofit adaptive something grant. But basically so that if you are having to make changes to your programming from a IT standpoint, and so we applied for that and got that, so we were able to add, you know, a handful of different Zoom accounts and get a new camera, things like that. So yeah, we're trying to exhaust all of our options, but yeah, the main thing is to give people a variety, give them a variety of ways to give and reasons to give. And it's been a great opportunity to put a lot of mission and things that people probably did not know about the zoo right in front of them, because when all of this was going on, people at home were a very captive audience.
I agree. One of the things, well, I was on a training that the Greater Des Moines Partnership did for all of the affiliate chambers, which was, he's very big in the international really in the chamber world, but he was talking to us about the social media aspect. And of course, with the flooding of COVID and everybody being shut down, not that social media and all that wasn't at the forefront anyway, but it became more so, and especially with the Zoom calls and all of that. And one of the things that he mentioned with Facebook, and Annie can probably speak to this even more than I, but with the Facebook algorithms, it was very important to have groups. Even though you've got your main social media page, you've got to have those groups. And Annie runs our food options. We started that, I think, day 2, Annie? I can't remember, of the shutdown.
I think it was fully launched by like the 19th.
Yeah, just to give people those options for food. And we didn't keep it to members only. There was no way to do that, and that wouldn't have been right. And so we have over 6,000 people that are in that group, which then, while we certainly don't promote the chamber on there necessarily, we're still working on how we're going to do that, you know, to value and leverage this group. I can tell you that the amount of calls or feedback or likes to our general FuseDSM page that occurred from having that group is amazing. So that's something everybody should consider is, yes, you've got your main group, but how can we create a group and get people into that? With the zoo, I very much can see that. Some of the smaller chambers in the country, they started doing videos of, just like you guys did, but going out to the attractions that weren't able to get the money and doing videos that then people could watch from home. And so then they created groups from that. and then marketed those groups. So anyway, just something to consider if there's a way with your business to be able to do that. It requires work. Andy spends a lot of time being the referee on that page, definitely, because while ours is a little bit different, it's not there to give feedback on, it's not a complaining page. It's just meant for people to get out there and highlight all the different places. So it does require some work, but I'd say.
Absolutely. And, the more creative you are, the more attention, especially when people are hurting for positive stories. When we did the zoo lights in the parking lot and all of that, I mean, news stations were literally hurting for positive stories to run. So we got quite a bit of attention on there, and they promoted the fact that we had an appeal out there. So I'm sure that helped tremendously as well.
Well, and I think too, you don't realize sometimes the partners that you have kind of waiting for the opportunity. Like you talked about the company and the signs. We had that too. We had somebody that jumped on and wanted to do a match campaign for us, which was great. We wouldn't have, that's not normally in our giving strategy for the year. And I'm sure it wasn't quite in theirs. And so I think what we really learned is that we had these amazing partners that were just kind of waiting for the right opportunity to jump to the forefront, to be able to help us out and partner in ways that we didn't know existed. And so I think, again, it keeps going back to, like you said, this hasn't been fun, but it's brought out a lot of things that we didn't know existed, from partnerships, from online capabilities, to forming new strategies. It gave us an opportunity, I think, to think more creatively as fundraisers.
It's, obviously it's like we keep saying, it's not a fortunate situation, but it's been what has turned out to be an amazing opportunity to reach very different audiences than what we do on a consistent basis year to year.
Well, and even like I was talking to my father-in-law has gotten involved with his local church. And so he's been running their live stream events. And so all of a sudden he's having conversations with me about online giving, which is, I don't think ever thought would come out of his mouth. But he was talking too about, you look at religious organizations and the reach that they have now simply by doing online services, and how he was telling me that they have a parishioner that's from North Carolina that's originally from this community that watches now and loves it. And he's like, I bet, if they were asked, they would probably give us some money. I said, they would, but you got to ask. And so I think it's also showing the reach is now indefinite of who your audience is. It's not just everybody here in Des Moines who might go to the zoo. It's anybody that's ever gone to the zoo or anybody that even likes the zoo. And so I think that's what we've learned too, is that it's not a geographical thing anymore, that we're crossing state lines and we're doing all these different things because the reach has changed, because they're able to connect with us virtually versus in person. And so that's been good too. But absolutely. I think I've been amazed by some of the churches of just their reach. As somebody was telling me, I think Hope, they went from like 20,000 regularly on the weekend to 40,000 that are watching online. That's just insane to me, of just how much more of an audience you have by offering something online, and then what does it look like moving forward. And I think it's the same for all nonprofits. How can we continue an online presence like that?
Yeah. Well, and one of them is, it's the stories too. And there's nobody from ARL on here, but I did talk to somebody about their creative marketing, and it's not just asking for money. It's literally, and sometimes we don't want to see it, but it's the ugly. It's that abused animal that if you ever look and see who's donating there, they're not just within their, the state of Iowa. They're getting donations from all over the world because somebody sees that story and they love animals. So, for instance, at the zoo, you take a story around one of your animals and the donations will come in from all over. So, that's one thing we at the chamber, while we didn't necessarily do this online fundraising type of thing, we were planning to pivot to these webinars anyway, because we absolutely could see that there was a large segment of our membership that can't make the in-person events for whatever reason. So it was something that, you know, had been on our to-do list, and we had to pivot very quickly. And we did it much slower because we wanted to make sure, with all the Zoom, the bombing and everything going on, that we wanted it to be good. So we're getting there. But yeah, the creativity that came out of this, you know, I've always had that philosophy: there's an upside to every downside, and we have to look at what that is. And for the chamber, it's been positive. So
Hi, I just wanted to say that as a member, it worked. You know, we went ahead and renewed the membership. Every time that I would see somebody post, are we gonna get credit for the months we couldn't use it? I would be piping in like, hey, they still have to feed the animals.
Yeah,
And
Claudia.
and there were a lot of members like, oh no, I know, I was just curious, and things like that. So you know, your members are really your biggest advocates. And I saw that with other members as well. You know, a lot of people would like my response.
Yes.
And then back to the honesty, we did not do any fundraising because we were thinking, who can give now? You know, everybody's hurting. But what we did on the child care center, we have families that rely on DHS assistance and families that are private pay. A lot of the private pay families, they tend to be more of the young professional that they were giving the option of working from home. So they were also keeping their kids at home. And what we said, it was very honest. We want to keep our staff. This is how much we spend on staff salaries. Are you willing to keep your kid home, and we will keep their spot for 50% tuition? And people pay the 50% tuition without bringing their kids to the center. We only had one family that said, we can't afford it either way. So, but we had to be honest, you know, and the board was like, do we really want to kind of like let them know that we may have to close our doors? It's like, yes, we have to let them know that we may have to close our doors if people decide to unenroll. But as a non-for-profit, you know, that's very hard to kind of like, you know, put all your cards on the table, really, and be that vulnerable. But it works. So
You hit it nail on the head right there. It's that vulnerability that so many fundraisers, nonprofits in general, are terrified to do. But especially fundraisers. Well, we can't say that. We can't share that. No one's gonna, you know, that's not positive. Well, you're right. It's not. It shows that we need their help. You know, and obviously there's a fine line there with oversharing as well when it comes to like just personal information. But yes, you have to be honest. And Claudia, thank you so much for being an advocate for us online. You are right. Our members are incredible. They really, really, really are. And with any member organization, you're gonna get outreach about that, about, well, you know, your doors are closed, I want a refund on my membership that I've had since October. And you're just like, wait, what? But for the most part, our members are out there. They are vocal and very supportive. So thank you for doing that. And I will say that I think that you are right. It's kind of been across the board as far as nonprofits go, especially during this time. You know, like you, Claudia, we did everything we could to keep our staff here and keep them working. And by doing that, we were able to fundraise, whether that's the content on social media or having a development team that's able to stuff the envelopes and do all of these things. But there were definitely nonprofits that took a different direction and unfortunately weren't able to fundraise because of it. I have a colleague that I had a conversation with I talked with him last week, and at his organization, literally showed up to work on Monday and they were told that they were furloughed for the unforeseen future. Everyone except for the CEO. And so therefore their director of philanthropy, he's like, Amanda, I basically ghosted all of our members. I ghosted all of our donors because I wasn't able to work. I couldn't put any sort of appeal out there because I was not allowed to work. And my heart breaks for nonprofits that either had to do that or maybe chose that right away, chose that option, because unfortunately that probably really hurt their fundraising. But yeah, you kind of you run the gamut in terms of how people handled it, what they were able to do, and when they were comfortable to put that ask out there. Any other questions? I didn't talk about Zubru anymore because we didn't, well, Zubru's in a weird spot. We're having our first on-site event tonight, which we're not calling Zubru because there will be no band because we do not have a sound permit, just like everyone else. But our Sip and Stroll is tonight, and that's an event that we capped the number of people that would be able to come. So we capped the number of tickets that would be able to be sold. But this was kind of our entry into what do events at the zoo look like. You talked about #1 fundraisers, Trish. Zubru is our #1 fundraiser. So we have to do something. We have to do something. So we're inching our way. And then July, we'll see what July looks like. We're going to do this for this tonight and next week. And then hopefully get a sound permit and see what happens after that. And then the wheels are always turning. So, you know, how does virtual anything fit into this? What can we do? And to maybe add some virtual component. That won't be tonight though.
Right. Now, Randy, St. Vincent had a pretty creative online ask. You partnered with a business and then there was matching funds. How did that come about? Oh, you're on mute.
We ended up with about 38,000.
That's good.
Yeah, Hope Law matched up to 15 or up to 13 of what we had. Yeah, it was crazy. It was the first time anything like that had been done, which was great because we canceled our main event for July. And so really that's the only thing. We've moved our golf tournament to September and gonna try to do some different things there just to get more money. And I'm not even sure that that'll even happen. I mean, I think right now we've got maybe 6 foursomes. So hopefully.
Well, and how did Hope come to you? Did you guys ask for it? Because
we had a guy that does volunteer work, is good friends with them. And so he just went to him and said, hey, will you match? He's just been a hustler for us. And he created the whole thing. We got all the ads on iHeartRadio, stuff like that. So he was a former radio person. So he had all these connections already around and has helped St. Vinny's since Steve came on 4 or 5 years ago. So that was just kind of a crapshoot on that.
That's great.
It's like Amanda said, you have to ask. I mean, you know,
Right.
one of the first things we didn't really think about as we were struggling and pivoting is asking. That there were plenty of businesses that weren't hurting, and there still are to this day. And we made that assumption. And while we've struggled on the staffing side as well with our budget, you know, having to be cut, and it hasn't been as much time to make that ask, but we brought on new members during this time period. So,
Which is great.
you know, I mean, I wouldn't say it's a large volume, but that's simply because of the time to ask, which we're changing. But no, we just can't be afraid to ask.
And you can't, back to that whole basketball analogy, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Like you have to take the shots, you have to. And so we did that in a variety of ways. We sent out outreach to some of our lapsed members, and we're able to bring back about, I want to say ended up being between 65 and 70 lapsed members that may or may not have ever wanted to come back in the first place. But we put the ask out there and they're like, you know what? We did used to love to go to the zoo. Why don't we do that again? And, you know, so yeah, you got to put that ask out there in as many different forms and formats as possible.
So what do you guys think? One of the things that we struggle with, I mean, I've only been here just about 4 years, but our donor base average age is like 105. So how do I, give me some tips on how to get people younger than me involved. I mean, you know, kids, my daughter's age, you know, 30-year-olds, they won't commit to anything until the 2 days before. The elderly people who are great donors want it in like handwriting. So where do I start with? Where do I start trying to get youngers?
I think you need to, yeah, like I would really recommend, I know Maylee and April on here, but like with the JCs, they're really great at, because that's who their audience is at 21 to 40, even just to pick brains. And that's what we're constantly doing, is that you may feel one way or you may feel a different way. It kind of changes depending on what part of the generation you're in too. But I think it's picking people's brains and trying new things. And even if they don't go perfectly, it's okay because you tried. But I will say, I think the biggest thing right now for the younger generation and giving is that what we've all been talking about, we value authenticity. So the more authentic an organization can be about what they need, where it goes, why you should consider them, but then that ease of use, like, why should I, you know, ease of use for donating financially, ease of use of donating supplies, letting people know that St. Vincent's is the only place that's taking donations right now of materials, stuff like that. But I think it's really partnering with the demographic that you want to attain and not just making assumptions. And so saying, as you guys, what do you look for in an organization? Why do you support the organizations that you do? And then also understanding, like, we're the same way. Our Moonlight Classic bike ride that we normally do, we have to do it virtually this year. It's hard on us because we get over 100 riders the day of that look at the sky and they're like, oh, it's nice out, I'm going to go for a bike ride. We're not going to get that this year. So we can't rely on it. So how do we make up that revenue shortfall because of the latecomers? And we targeted more of those that have been, you know, tried and true for years. But I think it's really talk to that demographic and just have that conversation of like, this is where we're struggling. What do you guys think? And they're not going to necessarily fix it for you, but I think they'll give you some surprising ideas that you might be able to try and incorporate.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely. And Maylee is still on. I think April might have gone away, but you know, the JCs are our young professional group within the chamber, and they're amazing to get out there and get that demographic that Andrea was referring to. The other thing I will say, and this is something that we did, you know, years ago at my time with the West Des Moines Chamber, was they started it with the concept of starting young. So the West Des Moines Chamber has programs with the schools, starting, you know, elementary programs with middle school, and then your high school, which is more likely that age group that may come in and be your volunteer. But when you get, you know, hunger is a very passionate issue for our young generation, all of us, of course, but even for our young generations. And being able to take some of that time, that marketing, and not think of, okay, we may not get the money today, but actually being able to say, you know, once a week, I'm going to connect with, you know, somebody in the school district or somebody, go to a school and talk about who St. Vincent is and get them passionate about it. You will start not only branding, you know, great organizations here in Des Moines. We have so many that are smaller ones compared to, you know, the food bank or maybe, you know, DMARC, where people, they have the power of the money behind them to be able to, I mean, not that they have a lot of money, but, you know, we're all struggling. We're all nonprofits, but you know what, they just have more name recognition. So it's who we automatically go to. So yeah, just getting out there and taking some of your marketing time or your promotion time and getting out there and making those connections, you know, with the schools might be a big help too.
Okay.
Randy, I think you guys did a good job at what Andrea was suggesting with your ask during all of this, because Steve was really open about the cost that increased in food and the increase of the number of people. And like, I've known Steve forever and ever. We went to college. But it was one of those things where like, he may be open with friends or family about, oh, well, this is, you know, what the cost of stuff is. But like him going on TV and saying, we've seen this much of an increase. We're not getting any food rescue programs because the food is selling out. And, you know, we're in that situation. And I know that CFM, which isn't far from you guys, Children,
Mhm.
Families, Urban Movement, they were a situation where everyone except their executive director got laid off.
Oh.
And they provide food for that neighborhood. And the neighborhood stepped up and started a meal pickup service at one of the churches in their neighborhood, where restaurants were providing meals, individuals were providing meals so that those kids didn't go without food. But you guys made some really great partnerships at doing the produce pickup, all of the like no contact food bank stuff, because that's really important, and people don't realize that the number of people who needed access to a food bank increased significantly. And like you guys happen to be one of them that's on a bus line, so it's easy for somebody to get a pickup from there. And then I like Andrea because my brother is a Moonlight Classic writer, that you guys have like a family option, because now it's not past kids' bedtimes.
That has been insane.
I
We have
sent it to my
sold
brother.
so many of those. And I have to tell you, we are struggling to think about how we can carry that forward because it's gone over so well. And we have people negotiating with us too, of like, well, my kid doesn't turn 16 until after Moonlight. Does he still qualify as a child? Like, it's fine. Like, we don't really care. But yeah, so the family pack for us, but we don't know how exactly to carry it forward because it's not normally a kids event. And so that's actually been our challenge as we look towards next year, is how we've sold so many of the family packs.
Could you do something like the Science Center does for their New Year's Eve, where they call it Noon Year's Eve and call it a Noonlight Classic and have it be the family event?
Oh, you people are smart. A Noonlight Classic.
I mean, when I got the email from you about it, I immediately forwarded it to my brother, and I said, do this with the kids, because like Sunday they stopped by to drop something off. My niece turns 8 next month. She biked 5.5 miles with my brother on Sunday. And like, I was like, why are you do this with your kids? He was planning on finding a babysitter so his wife could finally do Moonlight Classic with him, because it is his favorite bike ride of the entire summer.
It's so hard. And like you talk about too, like not making assumptions that people can't give right now, or that all businesses are struggling. We're all struggling in different ways. But the reality is, like, you look at the cycling industry right now, they can't even, we were so lucky. We bought our Burley trailer. My daughter turned 1 in March, and that was our birthday present to her, was her Burley trailer. And we are so lucky we bought it when we did, because you can't get one now in Des Moines for weeks, because everybody and their sister is out biking or walking. You can't get running shoes anywhere. Like, it's just kind of funny. But it's also looking like, how do we capitalize on that right now too? And so like with ours in the Moonlight, like we can't have it in person. It sucks, but it doesn't mean you still can't go for a bike ride, and then go for a bike ride with your family. And on top of it, talk to your family about mental health. Like, and that's been our big messaging around it this year, is just what can we do to increase mental health is so much even more important than it was yesterday. So how can we have those conversations? How can we help with that? But then also for us, like, we know the best ideas are stolen, and I steal a lot because I used to work from the American Cancer Society, so I steal a lot of ideas from them. Amanda and I used to work together there, so I've been watching what they're doing. So we're doing like a Moonlight Classic week every day. There's something going on so that people are staying engaged. But one thing that we normally don't do with Moonlight Classic is peer-to-peer fundraising, and we don't ask for just donations. So we ask for registration, that's it. So lately we've been having where you can add on to your registration fee and make an additional donation, but we are actually doing a Facebook campaign that's rolling out soon, specifically saying, help us by donating to Moonlight Classic, even if you don't ride, but you just want to support us. Like, here's your opportunity to do that. And then doing a small peer-to-peer fundraising challenge where they raise $250. Additionally, you get a muff thing or whatever, the buffs, with branding on it. So it's just kind of, for us, it was more of an opportunity to try stuff that we wanted to, because we had a little bit more captive audience, but also knowing just that, you know, we're not going to make that day of money that we normally do with riders that just walk up. We were also fearful, like we were on the fence, like, do you hold in person, do you not? And then Des Moines kind of made that decision for us, which was totally fine. But we were almost fearful that if we had the event, that we wouldn't be able to contain the amount of people that showed up. And so it also became a safety issue for us, of just, because everybody's out biking, what if 1,000 people come to this event and we do not have the capacity for that? And so us, it's really capitalizing on people at home and still asking them to go out because it's important. But then we're also selling the self-care side of it. So it's, again, getting our mission out there. Like, people knew Moonlight, but they didn't always know the why behind it. And so now's our chance to really showcase that and partner in a really different way. So it's been oddly fun because, again, it makes your brain think differently than how you've always been doing these events. But yeah, the family pack, like, again, I like the Noonlight Classic. You might be seeing that next year, Laura, because
so.
those family packs are insane. Like, it's just been, we did not expect that to happen the way that it did. And it was a great, pleasant surprise for us and how people have just capitalized on it. So yeah, it's one of those where it's like, how do we carry this forward? Because we really don't. 3-year-olds out in downtown Des Moines on a bike trail is not ideal at 10 o'clock at night, but yeah, doing something at noon or something during the day, that'd be cool.
So do you guys think, because, you know, we've got our 2 programs, the food pantry, social services, all that. When we do an ask or when we move forward, do you think, and I've gone back and forth with this at different places I've helped with, is it better to have a solid ask? I mean, not a solid ask, a solid purpose, like everything for this goes to the food bank, or everything for this goes to returning citizens, or, you know, I always put in there that it, you know, it goes directly to the programs. It doesn't go to staff or anything like that. Are we alienating people if we do that? Or do we just list our programs?
My advice to you would be, and this is kind of what we do, is when we attach asks to different parts of our mission that we're putting out there, we do not say that if you give to this particular, so just Facebook in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Anything raised on there is general. Even though we're promoting, you know, yes, the zoo does this in conservation, or did you know that the zoo is home to 4 eastern black rhinos and there are this many in the world. We also support the, you know, National Rhino or the Rhino Foundation, whatever. We don't say that it's going to go specifically to that program, because I do think that you are alienating, and I think you'll raise less money. That said, I also do believe that people do want to know where their money goes.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that you take advantage of those specific asks at different times throughout the year. When we do Giving Tuesday, Tuesday is always for a very specific thing. It's for a very specific project that has a very specific goal. And so we're able to meet those goals because people do want to know where their money is going. But I would say, in general, and this was the route that we took during the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
we did not want to, I guess, we didn't want certain parts of our mission or certain parts of our expenses or things that we have to spend money on to not qualify for that money.
Right.
So it really is, it's highlighting the different things that we do and how important they are, how many people are served by them, the impacts that they have, but not promising that if someone clicks donate on that particular highlight, that it's going to go to that particular program.
Okay.
In the grand scheme of things, it does, because
Right.
our general fund funds all of our programming. But yeah, I think that you limit yourself if you say that specifically.
Okay.
I would agree
That's been
too.
my thought, but
Yeah, ours, I will say, for one thing that we do a little bit differently, and we're doing more of it this coming year, is that if we have a set number of past donors that give to a specific, for us, it really comes down to branches. So like to our PACE program that houses 26 programs, if they're a PACE donor, we're looking to do strategic asks to them because they've already told us that PACE has a special place in their heart. Exactly. So we're going to do a targeted campaign to them only. And then say, this is because we know you've supported PACE in the past. Here's the capital project we're working on. We could really use your help this coming year. But we won't, otherwise, when we just open it up to everybody, yeah, we don't specify, because the other thing is cash flow issues. Then it's just hard. So, but we've we found the same success of people are good and they understand. But if they really, and it's usually your larger donors who might get into the nit and grit and say, I want my money to go specifically to this, but $2,500.
You know. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. If nobody has any other questions, Laura, do you have any comments to make in closing?
I don't, other than just thanking everybody for being here and thanking Nick for hosting. I flew in here 2 minutes to the start of it. Still not good at mornings. And so I appreciate knowing that you were there and at the controls and ready for us to go. So it was great to hear about all the fundraising. The wheels are turning in my brain, and I really appreciate all the information. And anyone who has volunteer opportunities, you know how to get a hold of me. I'm always looking for things to do. So give me a holler.